So let me remind everybody what GSD Fails is all about. Sometimes we fail in life, and sometimes life becomes an epic fail. But people can rise to become something new, someone better than they could have been without the fail. And GSD Fails is going to be a series of conversations to explore resiliency in the face of adversity, because we're going to talk to people who have fallen and have been transformed by their experiences to become someone better than they could have been without the fail. Hey everybody, episode 2 of GSD Fails. Today we have Andy Bishop from the ManGang with us. Andy, give us a little introduction, please.
Hello Tim, hello Lee. Very pleased to be here. Yeah, my name is Andy Bishop and I'm the founder of an organisation called ManGang, based here in the UK.
That's awesome, Andy.
Awesome.
You know, thank you so much for being here. This one's is very personal to me. I've known you for I think like 20 plus years. We met back in Maidstone in the UK, and Andy has been on this immense journey, a real roller coaster ride. And myself and Tim really wanted to showcase the power of the story that Andy has, and really show the challenges that are out there, but yet how you can overcome these hurdles, and what you learn from the depths of failure. So Andy, I love you, bro. I genuinely do, and and I'm so proud of you. And it's actually a little bit emotional to have you here with me, and thank you so much for supporting us. What we really want to hear from you is your story.
So where do I begin? So I was born in a small village in South Wales, and I grew up during the 80s, which for anybody that knows anything about South Wales in the 80s will know that it was quite a hard place to grow up in. There was lots of strikes going on, very predominantly mining and steelworks kind of industries around the place. So yeah, it wasn't a fantastic place to grow up. That led to lots of austere times, both in school, both in private life, and yeah, it was difficult. So whilst I was growing up in South Wales, I never played at being a chartered accountant or anything like that. I used to be out in the woods playing soldiers with my mates, and that was my dream from the moment I could run around in the woods playing soldiers. I wanted to be a real soldier. So inspired by the Falklands campaign, various other things that were going on in the UK at the time, off I went to join the army. Joined the army in 1990. I ended up in the Royal Engineers, and I did a full 22-year career within the Corps of Royal Engineers, and I had an absolute whale of a time. Managed to promote through the ranks. Left in 2012, but I carried with me some quite difficult times. So shaped by my upbringing. When I grew up in Wales, we played rugby. For any of those Americans watching this, that's the game that you play without pads, but we still hit each other pretty damn hard. So rugby was my sport. I played it from in the school playgrounds. That was my game, and I loved it. And I carried on playing it through the army. I loved doing it, and one of the reasons I loved playing rugby was because it added to the image that I thought I had to portray. Notice I say I thought I had to portray. Now, when I do these talks to people, these inspirational kind of talks, I always ask a question of the audience, and I ask the audience to think of a time when they saw their father figure cry. So when they were growing up, to think of a time when they saw their father figure cry. And I'm always blown away by the response. There's usually one or two hands go up, and then I'll ask when that was. If it was at a funeral, discount it. If it was at the realization of a terminal illness or something, we'll discount that as well and pretty much all the hands go down. And this is where I think my problems kind of started to come into play. I lived my entire adult life from probably about my late 20s behind a mask. I put on my uniform every single day. I was being the man that other people wanted me to be, or I thought that other people wanted me to be. So when I joined the army, I had lots of role models, my training NCOs, my sergeants, my troop staff, the people that I met and worked with on a daily basis, and I took a little piece of all of these people, and it was always the tough pieces. It was always the firm but fair kind of leadership model that these guys were exercising that I took away. I didn't take away them crying in the background. I didn't take away them sharing their emotions, because they didn't do that. So I was learning to become a man. I was learning that men don't cry. And that kind of reinforced my upbringing in South Wales, that to be a man, it meant that you've got to be tough, you've got to be emotionally restrained, you've got to be self-reliant, you've got to sort your own problems out. You can't go to anybody to help, because you will be perceived as weak. And I kept that going all the way through my military career. I mean, I've got no hair. I lost my hair very early on in life. I blame that on my first marriage. All my hair fell out. And I'm covered in tattoos. I've got tattoos where I shouldn't have tattoos. I'm 6 foot tall. I'm still quite stocky from my rugby days. And I look, to all intents and purposes, like a tough bloke. And that suited me really, really fine. So it must have been about early 2000s. I promoted a couple of times. I got posted, and I got put into a team where we were training soldiers to progress through their career. So they're already trained soldiers, and this is kind of a promotion kind of course that they needed. So to go to be part of this team meant that I was pretty good at what I was doing, and I was, by blow my own trumpet, I was a damn fine soldier. So I turned up at this unit, and very small team. There are only 6 of us in the entire team, and we're training up to 100 people at a time. So the first time that this came to light, the fact that there was something wrong inside my head, we'd planned to do something on a Friday afternoon. I'd planned on training myself on this particular technical thing on the Friday morning, and like all great plans, they don't survive first contact. It changed. So my boss came in on the Friday morning and said, right, can you teach that now? And I just said, no, I've had enough, in not so many words. I'm going home. And off I went. I didn't say it as politely as that. There may have been a raised voice. There might have been some swear words thrown in there. And Lee will allude to this, that you definitely don't shout at your seniors when you're in the military. It's not something that bodes well. So off I went home, with the intention of ending my life. I'd been thinking about it for a time, and this was the straw that broke the camel's back. Now, for whatever reason, the people that I'd just been shouting at, they came around and got me. They came and spoke to me, and they stopped shouting at me. They stopped being angry with me, and they were speaking to me as a human being. And they dragged me kicking and screaming to the medical centre. I sat in front of the doctor. I explained the symptoms, explained what was going on. And this doctor was sitting there. I remember it. It's clear as day. This doctor, who was a parachute trained, stereotypical tough guy in his own right, in his uniform, looked me in the eye. I'm in my uniform, and he said, "Mate, you're depressed." And I looked at him and I said, "How can I be?" I said, Look at what's sitting in front of you. How can I be depressed? Look at me." And he said, "It can happen. It can happen to the best of people." He said, "You are depressed." So he said, basically, right, what I'm going to do is sign you off for 2 weeks. I'm going to give you some medication. Take 2 of these, call me in the morning, kind of thing. So I took the 2-week sick leave. The prescription got screwed up and thrown in the bin, because I knew that if I started taking that medication, they'd start taking away what I needed to be defined as a man. So they would take my uniform away from me. They'd done that for 2 weeks by sending me on this sick leave. But to go on the medication, they would take away the ability to bear arms. They would take away the explosives that we were using, and I would be restricted to doing administrative duties, and that wasn't what I joined the army to do. So I took the 2 weeks off, didn't do anything, didn't change anything, went back to work. I was well rested, and then still managed to get promoted and posted on again. So I was in my new job. I'd been there for a couple of years. I'd been to see the doctor. I said, look, I don't feel too hot. But again, they just said, right, yeah, take these antidepressants, off you go. But I never accepted that anything was wrong with me. About 2 years into that posting, I blew up, basically. I suffered an enormous breakdown. Massive breakdown. I was supposed to be going out and doing an explosive training day with some kids. And a job that I love doing, showing these kids just what a fantastic boys' own kind of lifestyle you can have in the military. And I couldn't get out of my room. I was in my full uniform. I'd washed and shaved. I had my rucksack on, ready to go, and I could not get out of my room. There was some invisible force there. I just physically couldn't get out of my room. And that was that. A friend of mine, just so happened that my best mate was detailed to look after me that day. He was there to be my driver for the day, and he came looking for me. So he called all the right people, and that afternoon I was admitted into a psychiatric hospital where I spent about 9 weeks in this hospital. So the whole time I was in this psychiatric hospital, I was in with a load of civilians. I was nodding in the right places. I was smiling in the right places. I was having conversations in the right places, but still all I was focusing on was the day I could get out of that hospital and go back to being a soldier. Now, that happened. I got released. That sounds like I was in some kind of prison. I got let out of the hospital. I was still seeing psychiatrists and counsellors and bits and pieces, but still nothing really was changing. I was just nodding in the right places. Now, after being in the hospital, I accepted a little bit more that I needed to start taking medication. So I started taking medication, and off I went. Because I was taking medication, exactly what I knew was going to happen happened, and I was then removed from operational kind of roles. So I was thrown into training wings. I was thrown into like administrative posts, and just left to bide away my time. And then I kept going, got posted again, another training unit, posted again. So left the army in 2012, and I was planning on getting into the events industry. The events industry was something that I wanted to really throw myself into. And I don't know if you remember a big event that was happening in the UK around about 2012 time. So the London Olympics was taking place. So I threw my hat in the ring and I started applying for jobs with the London Olympics. How good is that going to go on a CV of somebody that wants to get into the events industry? So I've never had a job interview, didn't know how they worked, didn't know how to do them, but I went down to Canary Wharf in London and started the interview process for these jobs. Went back 4 or 5 interviews later, and every time I went back, I was going up a level in this tower until the final interview when we were standing in this big boardroom overlooking the Olympic Village when they offered me this job. And I was like, brilliant. Civilian life is going to be a breeze. I'm going to smash this. First ever job interview, and I've got this fantastic dream job. So life is good. I'm in the final few months of leaving the military, and started concentrating on my home life. So back home on gardening leave, getting ready to start work at the Olympics, and we were standing outside our coffee shop. I was smoking a cigarette, watching life go by and being nice and content with life. I got a phone call. Hello, Mr. Bishop. Oh, hello. Yes, it's such and such from the London Organising Committee of the Olympic Games. Oh, I was waiting to hear from you. Brilliant. Really, really nice of you to phone me. When am I starting? What's my reporting details? Oh, yeah, about that. We've withdrawn our offer of employment. Click. Down went the phone. I was mortified was an understatement. Right then, everything that I'd planned on had just been pulled from right under my feet. So that was the start of a big downhill spiral for me. So that was around about the April, May time. And yeah, that was, I started going downhill. I started applying for jobs. And what I thought was, I've only ever had one interview. It can't be that hard. Let's get out there and smash it. So I started applying for these jobs. I was tailoring my CV, my resume to get out there and start giving my all to civilian life. So I got job after job after job, closing date passing, rejection emails, phone calls saying, yeah, sorry, you're overqualified. Now, what does that even mean? What does sorry, you're overqualified? In my mind, you're either qualified or you're not. What is this overqualified thing? So yeah, about 450 job applications later, and I'm starting to go downhill, big sticks. Around about the October time, I decided to make a plan. I'd become a burden. In my mind, I'd become a burden on society. I'd become a burden on my family. I'd become a burden on my friends because I wasn't giving anything to anybody. And my head was going down and lower and deeper. So I made a plan. I made a plan that I was going to shuffle off this mortal coil around Christmas time. Around about that time as well, that was when my moods started lifting. Because I'd made this plan, I didn't have to endure this pain for too much longer. I knew it was going to be all over. And that's what I did. I went out in that December, and with no intention of coming back. So I was still on loads of medication. I was on all kinds of bits and pieces. But the minute I did what I was going to do when I was out there in that forest, the minute that I did the action that was supposed to end my life, it kind of cleared the thoughts. It kind of pulled the curtains apart of all these negative thoughts that I was having and all this anxiety and all this stress that was battling for supremacy within my head. And I was able to think clearly. And the first thing that I felt was regret. I was like, I don't want to die. What have you just done? That's stupid. And then my mission then that night became staying alive. I knew that I had to stay awake. I had to stay alive that night. And get through the night. So that's what happened. Then made the decision to come off all the tablets and all the medication, all the counselling, because that was supposed to stop me from doing what I'd done. I really don't recommend that. If you're on any medication for any kind of depressive illness, please don't come off it other than in a controlled manner, supervised by a medical professional, because that can be really, really, really dangerous. So I made this pledge with myself. I'm coming off all the medication. I'm going to get bigger, better, faster, stronger. I'm going to go out and smash life. And I did for about 5 years. I really did. I went out there and I smashed everything. I was about 6 stone lighter than I am now. I was the go-to man in work. If something needed doing, people would come and see me. It's the old adage: if you want something doing quickly, get the busiest person to do it, and they'll fit it in. I was first in the office. I was last to leave. I was just putting impossible deadlines on everything that I did. Problem is with all that is my family life was suffering, because all I was thinking about was getting out on my bike or doing stuff for me, and I had to keep this image up that that's what the world wanted to see. And yeah, I ended up breaking down again. And this time it was worse than the last time. Work-related stress, work-induced stress, but stress that I had placed on myself. So this time I got sent to see an occupational health psychiatrist, and she basically said, right, you're not well. I'm going to sign you off work for 6 weeks. And I broke down in that doctor's office. I broke down and said, well, what am I meant to do without work? I've got to go to work. And she said, right, listen. She said, you watch movies, don't you? I said, yeah, I watch movies. And she said, do you ever get disturbed while you're watching a movie? I'm thinking, where is she going with this? What is this crazy talk she's giving me here? She said, what kind of movies do you like to watch? I said, action movies. And she said, when when you have that force break, so somebody knocks the door, if there's post come in, or something happens that disturbs your concentration on a movie, she said, what do you do? I said, well, I stop it. And she said, what do you do when you go back to it? She said, does it start again in exactly the same place? She said, because if you go away for this 6 weeks and don't do something about your life, she said, this is when, this is what's going to happen. You're just going to pause that explosion. And I thought, that is really powerful. That really resonated with me. And what she was saying was, you need to accept that something's wrong, because all you keep doing is delaying the inevitable. You're stopping this explosion from happening. She said, if you go away for six weeks now, away from work, and she said, you don't do something, yes, you might rewind the movie of your life a little bit, but the explosion that's going to end, that crescendo at the end of that film, is still going to be there. So I started working on myself. I started taking the medication, getting the right medication. I started speaking to counselors. I started going to therapists. I started really concentrating on me. And I got better. I got tested. I got tested more than any man could probably ever get tested during this period. So in the July of that year, I was still off on sick leave. I received a phone call. And I looked at my phone and I saw this name appear on my phone, and I thought, this is something bad with a particular circle of friends that I really hold dear to myself. You might be able to tell by the inflection in my voice that I'm starting to get to a bit of a touchy subject here. And I couldn't answer the phone because I knew it was bad news coming. So it rang. It was ringing every 2 or 3 minutes, probably for about 20 minutes. And I thought, I've got to answer this. So I went and sat in the lounge. I sat on the couch. I had the phone in front of me, ready to pick it up when he phoned next, because he was being quite persistent. The phone rang. I answered it. First words out of his mouth were, "Are you sitting down, buddy?" I'm like, yeah, I'm sitting down. And he said, "It's Sparky. He was killed in a firearms incident last night in Germany." Right there and right then, the world just stopped turning. I was like, yeah, thanks, mate. Put the phone down. I didn't even try and question and reason or anything why. Now, a number of things started happening then once I heard that news. That circle of friends, that circle of military friends that had served together for a period of time, probably haven't spoken to each other in one hit for God knows how long. But it was like we'd never been apart, because we all started phoning each other. We were having group conversations. We were involved in chats, and we were all trying to work out what had happened to our mate. The army had released this thing as a firearms accident, and rightly so, until the investigation's carried out. That's the right way to do it. So we spent a good period of time reasoning how this accident, and we convinced ourselves that this was an accident. I think deep in our heart of hearts, we knew that this bloke had made the decision to end his own life. But we couldn't come to terms with it, because a phrase that's often thrown around when somebody ends their life is, he's the last person you'd expect. Well, this guy wasn't the last person you'd expect. He was the guy that was standing behind the last person you'd expect, pushing the last person you'd expect forward. That's how much of a character, of a friend, of an amazing human this guy was. So yeah, that was an amazing big kind of epiphany that happened there. We went to his funeral. We went out to Germany and pay our last respects. He was buried with full military honours in a German graveyard. He's married to a beautiful German lady, and he's got a son that's been brought up to speak English and German. So some things happened at the funeral. It was an emotional affair, as you can imagine. And yeah, the actual service was being delivered in 2 parts, one by a British padre, one by a German padre. The British military padre was delivering it nice and clear and loud and what have you. The German padre was using a microphone and a PA system to address the congregation. And there was probably about 400 or 500 people in this congregation, all gone there to pay their last respect. And it was a moment during that ceremony when everything had gone quiet, and they were undressing the coffin. They were taking the flag off the coffin and the medals and what have you, ready to hand to the widow. And they were doing some little bits and pieces. There's no talking going on. And the padre had taken this microphone and he put it down on an empty chair. And he placed that microphone down on this empty chair, and it was right next to where the my mate's son was sitting. And where I was standing in the graveyard, there was a big speaker. I wasn't too far from this PA system. I don't know if anybody else could hear what I could hear, but the sound that I could hear and the image that I saw then stay with me for the rest of my life. The pain that was on this poor kid's face, that was written, etched deep into his face, the despair, the torment, the anguish that was just present in this child's face, and the lack of life behind his eyes that was there was just, it just burned I can see it now as clear as I'm looking at this screen. But the most haunting thing about it was the noise that was coming out of this kid's face as he was staring at his dad as he was about to get dropped into the ground. He was just muttering, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy," over and over again. And it was the most horrible noise that I've heard in my life. And this emotion that came over me at that time, I hated my mate. I absolutely hated him. I couldn't understand for the life of me why he would do that to that kid, to his wife, to his friends, to everybody that had made the effort to go out there and pay their last respects to him. I just couldn't understand it. So I'm proud to say that emotion was short-lived. I didn't hate him. I just hated the thing that he'd done, I think. A little bit later on, we were at the wake, which took place in a beautiful German beer garden, middle of July, beautiful summer's day. Lots of people that haven't seen each other for a long time. There's beers getting passed around, there's beers getting bought, there's glasses being chinked. There's all kinds of stuff going on. I took myself off to one side to watch what was happening. And whilst I was off at one side, I was listening and I was looking, and I could see these little groups of people standing around, 5, 6, 7 people, chinking the beers, having the conversations. Do you remember when? Do you remember this? Do you remember the other? Laughter, crying, singing, all this kind of stuff going on. And I looked around there and I thought, wow, now I'm confused. And I stood there and I was so totally and utterly confused. And the reason for that confusion was there was all these people there that called this man our friend, our brother, our colleague, our ally, whatever we wanted to call him. But we loved him enough that we would make that pilgrimage from wherever we were doing. We'd drop everything to go and pay our last respects. And I was confused as to why he thought that he couldn't reach out to a single one of those people there assembled. Because I know what would have happened if he'd phoned me. If he'd have phoned me and said, "Mate, I'm struggling," I wouldn't have told him to man up. I wouldn't have told him to pull himself together. I wouldn't have told him to sort himself out or put some cement in his coffee and toughen up. I wouldn't have said any of those things. I'd have probably jumped into that hole that he was in and helped him out, because I know the way out, because I found the way out myself, and I would have helped him through it. And that was kind of where the idea for the ManGang was first formed. So fast forward now a year or so, I was back in work. I was teaching building site managers about health and safety, and the health and safety people had decided that they put a little section in on mental health. So I went rogue for this particular day. I'd been teaching these guys for about 4 days. I had a bit of spare time and I turned the projector off basically and told them my story in a lot more detail than I've just told you guys now. And I remember thinking at that time, what are you doing, mate? What are you doing? These guys are going to start throwing things at you. They're going to take the mick out of you. They're going to make fun of you. They're not going to, you've lost their respect. You've lost their faith, everything. I was worried. I was worried about facing up and being embarrassed later on. I thought all these things were going to happen. So I positioned myself, as I was getting to the end of my talk, I positioned myself near the door ready so I could make a quick exit and run away for lunch. And I never made it to lunch that day, because to a man, There's 20 blokes in that room, and every single one of them stopped, shook my hand and said, thank you. I was like, thank you for what? And they were saying, thank you for telling me. Then a couple of weeks later, I was at a football match. I'd gone down to Brighton with my missus. We got lost and ended up in the wrong side of the football match. And this is soccer for the Americans amongst you. So we were on the wrong side of the stadium, in with the wrong set of fans. And this big guy started running towards me. Big, huge monster of a man started running towards me. And I thought, I'm about to get lumped here. I'm about to get smashed here because I'm an opposing fan. I'm on the wrong side. So as he's getting closer, I noticed he wasn't angry or anything. He had a big smile on his face, and this smile was getting bigger the closer he got to me. So as he got to me, he right up in front of me, he threw his arms around me and gave me a massive, massive bear hug. And as he did that, he whispered in my ear, thank you. And I looked back and I was like, I know you. You were on my course a few weeks ago. That's where I know you from. And I said, what are you thanking me for, mate? And he said, thank you for sharing your story, because if you hadn't, he said, I wouldn't have told my missus, I wouldn't have told my doctor, I wouldn't have told my employer, and I wouldn't be in a good place right now.
Wow.
And that's when the idea of the ManGang was kind of formed. That's when I discovered by accident that it's not weak to speak, and I discovered the power of empowering other men to talk by sharing our vulnerabilities. It doesn't make us weak. If anything, it might make us a bit stronger.
Wow, Andy, that is such a powerful story. I'm not going to lie. I almost had to turn my camera off for a little bit. But it's so true. And I don't know how this happened. So I'm prior service. I did the Operation Iraqi Freedom thing. I did the civilian contractor in Iraq thing. I was a EMT and a paramedic before all of that. And so I've always been an action guy. I've always been around, the darkest moments that humans can go through. And I don't know what it is about type A people that have to be strong for everybody else, that we don't think that the strong people we surround ourselves with will be strong for us. And I am glad that you had that moment to where you just broke down and told your story and got to experience that. Because ironically, and I don't know how this happens, but I know how we can fix it. But the people that are around us, the people that experience these hard life experiences with us, understand better than anybody. And they will totally, with a few exceptions, they'll totally support us and help us and be there for us, because we've all felt the pain and we've all had to deal with it. And we've all had to be strong for the public, be strong for each other. So how do we put that message out there? I know you're doing it with the ManGang, but how do we do it on a broader scale to say that people understand and people will be supportive? How do we change that cycle?
So I think what we've got to start addressing is what I call toxic masculinity. Yes, we can go out and we can do all these alpha male type things. We can go out and do these things that are stereotypically tough guy things. But what we've got to start showing, the next generation and the people around us, is that it's okay. It's okay. You can do all these tough things. You can do all these things that are viewed as hard and whatever. It's okay to have a down moment. I think there's a lot of perfectionism that kind of drives people at the moment. We compare ourselves to other people way too much. We end up lying to ourselves. So I think that's where the first thing comes from, the first part of it. And this is what I did. I lied to myself for so many years because I convinced myself that I was stronger than that. But it's only when you start revealing that honesty and get rid of those negative judgments about yourself and being totally honest with yourself, can you ever expect to kind of move forward. And once you start doing that with yourself and with other people, then that kind of empowers them to say, do you know what? I'm gonna open up. And we see it week on week with the ManGang. We get guys that turn up face to face in these meetings. Sometimes they're that anxious about coming into this meeting full of strangers that we have to literally put our arm around them, obviously COVID secure arm around them, and escort them over the threshold. But very soon, once they've got in there and they've started sharing their vulnerabilities and they're sharing their experiences with others, and others are saying, "Oh, I did that," they kind of go, "Did you?" And they look at this person and they think, "Well, if he's gone through it and he's come out the other side, then I can." We've created this generational thing within the ManGang, where guys have literally come to us straight out of the hospital from trying to end their own lives. And now they're at such a level where they're facilitating the meetings, and they're really getting out there and winning at life again, because they've got this solid foundation to go on.
Taken me a long time to talk, to be honest. Even though I've heard this story numerous times, it's tough. It's tough to comprehend, and I'm finding it difficult to resonate or digest, to be honest with you. I'm not going to ask any questions because I don't think I can get a question out. All I'm going to say is, man, you're an amazing human, and to have gone on the journey that you've had to, and to hold yourself together like you have is, it makes me speechless. And to see what you're giving, what you're truly giving now to these broken men who, I can't tell their stories because I can't betray their confidence, but numerous ones that have tried to end their lives and still think about ending their lives. And you, for nothing, have created ManGang for the want of nothing. You take nothing, yet you give so much. And I want you to think about this. You, because of something tragic that happened, you're saving lives every second of the day through the work that you're doing, through the work that ManGang's doing, and through those amazing men that are in ManGang. So, Andy, I thank you. I apologize for my emotions. I'm sorry to people that are watching that I can't really ask a question, but for a man to have to listen to another man who's gone through this amazing journey to be here today is, speechless. Man, we love you, we thank you, and just keep doing what you're doing. That's all I have to say.
Thanks, buddy. You don't have to apologize for your emotions though, mate. There's nothing wrong with showing emotions. They're there to be experienced, and let's experience them.
And that's a great point, probably to close on. Recently somebody's made me aware of this concept of the warrior poet, and and this guy says, he was like, we can't look at ourselves as being half warrior and half family man, half warrior and half businessman. You're all warrior, and yet you're all poet. You have to be 100% the protector, the servant, the strong person for society, and 100% compassionate, family involved, and emotional. And you can't separate those two. The weight of the expectations that you place on yourself will bury you. And I think, would you agree with that sentiment, that we put the weight of these expectations on ourselves, and we should embrace both the warrior side and the compassionate, emotional poet side?
So for me, Tim, that is powerful stuff, the separation and the emotion. We are just one person. We are just one entity. And the key for it all with me, I think, is honesty. We've got to be absolutely honest. So think of a time, I don't know, maybe you've been out driving today, maybe think of a time when you've been out driving with somebody that's not the best driver. And you tell them about how they've made you feel while while you've been driving. Man, you were driving like a lunatic. You were carving up all these people. You're driving like a lunatic. What you're doing there is you're not being honest. You're casting negative judgments. What you're actually honest statement would be is, I was really scared while you were driving. But we won't say that. What we'll do is that, because that means being honest to ourselves, and maybe it's an emotion that we don't want to feel. So we'll try and empower that emotion, and we'll pass it off onto somebody else, and we'll empower that other person. So telling somebody that you're scared, there's nothing wrong with it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I remember on the eve of war, going into Iraq. We were sitting in Kuwait, ready to go over the border. I remember sitting on top of my armored personnel carrier, sitting with the guys, and saying, "Yeah, I'm worried about this. I'm nervous about this," and they all were as well. But the reason I told them that I was nervous was so that they would trust me. They would trust me then, because I was their section commander, and I'd bring them all home. And that's exactly what I was being honest about, you know.
And you know what? That's the empowerment of sharing how we're feeling, because it doesn't actually separate us from our peers. It actually brings us closer together, because, wow, if he looks strong and he's feeling this way, then I must be strong as well. I must have that strength somewhere. And I think that's a great point to end on. Thanks, Andy. I appreciate you coming out. Lee, thanks for bringing Andy on. It's been amazing.
My pleasure. It's not weak to speak, guys.
Thank you for having me.